We need to provide love and compassion, not just drugs and limited interaction. I have a question for everybody. What is the most important fungus in the history of medical advancements? We're here at this, oh, I see a hand, yeah. Great answer. In 1928, there was a Scottish physician and microbiologist named Alexander Fleming, who just happened to stumble upon a discovery that has revolutionized Western medicine ever since. See, back in his home, he was putting out petri dishes of bacteria and testing growth. One day, he left a petri dish uncovered, went on vacation for a week, came back and found that it was covered in mold. Rather than throwing it away, he decided, let's examine this further. And he found zones around the mold where bacteria were not growing. His heart raced with excitement because, you see, Fleming was an army doctor, and he knew very well that in World War I, we lost more soldiers to infection than we did to direct combat on the battlefield. And so he found that there was something happening in this mold, a secretion, that inhibited the growth of bacteria. This led to a revolution in medicine, where the antibiotic was developed, and that fungus was Penicillium notatum. Now he coined it penicillin. Since then, we were able to have surgeries in a much safer way. We were able to decrease the mortality rate of common ailments. We were able to allow medicine to fix these problems that were having high death tolls in society, and it changed our understanding and application of infection control. It helped us prioritize hygiene. It helped us prioritize sanitation in a time that wasn't common. But like many medical advancements, this life-saving tool is in jeopardy. If we think about antibiotics right now and the overuse and misuse of antibiotics and the creation of resistant bacteria strains and what that has done for superbugs. We look at livestock farming and the way that we are just pumping antibiotics out there. This is a huge burden on healthcare right now. And pretty soon, we won't have this drug anymore if we keep going the way we are. And so we're all responsible to help this gift that was formed by a floating spore in Alexander Fleming's lab in 1928 to help it continue. The psychedelic industry has the same level of excitement to revolutionize mental health. It also has the same level of caution and concern that will this industry find a longevity or will it come to an end? And if you don't think that's possible, you only have to look back to the 60s and 70s when the government was, coming in and saying, hey, psychiatrists and all of you psychonauts who are using these psychedelic meds, here's the Controlled Substance Act of 1970, and I know everybody in this room is very familiar with that. So while many believe that the threat may still come from the government or regulatory bodies, I know there are some people in this room fighting that fight, right? We have the Nevada Coalition of Psychedelic Medicine who's helping to guide, shout out, helping to guide legislative reform and help preserve the health and sanctity of this medicine. But that's not my fight. Although I love being on the board and I will educate and it is my mission to help serve, I think that there are three other parties that are very critical to the longevity of this work, and that's one, the business leaders, the business owners, the people who are creating the system, the processes, the culture, the way in which we're partaking in this service. Two, the care providers, the practitioners, the doctors, the therapists, those on the care team delivering this service, and how are they doing that? And three, it's the patient community. It's all of us who are absorbing this work and doing it the right way, doing it in a way that we keep the medicine sacred. Now, when it comes to this fight to be able to preserve psychedelic medicine, I take the Bruce Lee stance, be water. If you think about the current of psychedelic medicine as it's passing through society right now, and the regulatory bodies are like the riverbanks, guiding the flow. Maybe big pharma is like the boulders getting in our way, the eddies keeping us going in circles. But we, the practitioners, the leaders in this space, the patients, we are the water flowing through. And if we resist and try to go upstream, we're not going to get too far. It wasn't until I created my own practice 8 years ago where I started to realize we can't resist. We have to go with the current. When I was in residency here at UNLV 10 years ago, I almost got kicked out 3, 4, 5 times. And it was because I was angry. I had kind of resentment for this industry that I signed up for. Where is the care? Where is the love? Why are we just following a sick model, pathologizing the human experience, and using diagnostic algorithms to try to care for people? What I later realized through practice is psychiatry isn't broken. It's young. It's naive. It's doing the best it can. We learned medication management. We learned these tools that have helped a sliver of our society, but what we see nowadays more than ever is that mental health is a pandemic. And we need to change and reform the way in which we're providing mental health care. And as you all know, psychedelics have laid the foundation for a new paradigm shift. As a medical business owner, I realized we can't stick to this, spend a little bit of time with the patient, prescribe a drug, model of care. We can't go to prescribing meds after just a 5-minute visit. We can't say, hey, you should do therapy, go see someone else. We have to bring holistic care together, right? To provide that safe container, to provide an ability to allow people to be vulnerable in some of their darkest, difficult moments. We need to allow people to learn more about themselves and build awareness so that they can heal themselves. We need to provide love and compassion, not just drugs and limited interaction. Like many of you in this room, psychedelic medicine has changed my life. And it was a lot of that anger and resentment that I harbored in many other facets of my life that I noticed, not just in residency, but through interactions, relationships, business relationships. And this drug has really helped me to evolve and find that peace. Now, right now, my drug of choice in treatment, and I'm very honest about the work that I do as a psychiatrist, I engage in ketamine therapy very often because it helps me align and be my best self, prioritize what's important, and let everything else, kind of all that clutter, flow away. Right now, there are roughly 1,500 ketamine clinics in the US, up from 16 in 2015. When we commercialize a drug that quickly, we have to be cautious. All of us, the business leaders, the practitioners, the patient community. And so I'd like to go over 5 tenets that I believe is so important for all of us to engage in, to follow and fully believe and own, take ownership and accountability so that we can preserve the longevity of this work. And those 5 tenets start with number 1. Patients come first. No matter how you dice it, you have to put the patient first. This is our credo in our practice. If you all, I see a lot of people from our clinic here, and you all know, we have a philosophy, a guiding compass, that if we don't know really how to make a decision or how to handle something going on, patient comes first. That is our guiding compass, and the team comes second. It's important that we have good culture, good workplace, that everybody's happy in their work. And the business comes last. At a previous company that I founded, I was told by a lawyer, Dr. Zand, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders. And I looked him in the eye and I said, no, you are wrong. I have a primary responsibility to my patients, a secondary responsibility to my team, and a third priority is to the business, making sure that it stays afloat. During this time in this company, we were doing a lot of planning for exit strategy, capital raises, financial involvement from other people, and it changed who I was going through that time, realizing that I didn't sign up for this for an exit. I signed up for this to allow people to exit the hell in which they live in, to enter into the beauty and heaven that they can create in their own mind. But being in that work, at every meeting, capital raise, talk to an investor, plan for an exit, I was not my best self. Many of you in this room knew me during that time, and I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't show up the way that I should have, to be the light, to be centered in the work rather than focused on the outcomes. And you all were there for me. I see many of you here who held space for me to help me work through that. This is something I learned in my work in the industry, is that we can't focus on creating a company and see how quickly can we make profits and how quickly can we sell, and maybe we'll have big pharma come buy us out. This is not the way to treat patients and not the way to preserve the sanctity of this industry. Who is the patient? When we talk about patient comes first, I think that's the first thing we need to destigmatize, is that I am the doctor, you are the patient. No, that's not it. We are all patients in this work. We all have a mental health journey. Nobody's sick, nobody's ill. It's a life experience that we're going through, the ups and downs, and we have to be there for each other. And if it is true that we all have a mental health journey, then what is it that we're treating within all of us? When I first learned psychiatry, I learned that we're treating depression, anxiety, bipolar, ADHD. But if you really look at that and the DSM criteria, these are man-made subjective illness disease states. What are we really going through? If you look at the etymology of psychiatry, Greek words psyche coming from the soul, iatry coming from healing, healer of the soul. This is the work that we're up to, all of us, whether you are a practitioner, a business leader, or you're sitting in the chair doing your own self-work. We are going within to try to find, how do we heal the soul? Now, how do you measure the soul? How do you image the soul? How do you take a blood test of the soul? It's not possible. And so do we fit into the medical paradigm that exists in Western medicine right now and the way that we're trying to treat with psychedelic medicine? I would argue that it takes much more of an art, an understanding of the human nature, rather than an understanding of science or pharmacology, to really be able to show up for somebody and help them. And so if we're truly after healing the soul and we're putting the patient first, what do we arrive to? Is that we are not individuals in this work. This is a collective consciousness, and when we are helping ourselves, we are lifting up society with us. And when we are lifting up society, we are lifting up ourselves. So that first tenet, patient comes first, we practice this every day in our work, and I believe it's the success that comes to the patient outcomes. The number two tenet that I believe is so crucial is accessibility. The people who need this medicine the most cannot afford it. And when this work started professionally in my industry in 2019, Spravato came out. It was a time when then COVID took over in 2020, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity for people to come to the office, but it was covered by insurance. I went on to found a company called Better You, where we focused on self-pay at-home ketamine therapy. It's a beautiful service. We created beautiful protocols, therapeutic guidance, team members who showed up for our patients in a time when you probably didn't want to go to the office. We were all wearing masks, we were all isolated. We were able to access people through telemedicine. I have no regrets about this, other than one thing that came up and kept irking me, is that every time someone said, you know what, I could really use this care, our response was, do you have $1,000? And that's just not how medicine should be practiced. Now, there is a niche for that, and I'm not shaming any self-pay industries. I still do self-pay work. But we can't only focus on that as an industry. We have to be able to provide access in a way that everybody can attain that care. Legalization of psychedelic medicine, I heard a good friend, John Dalton, say today that if we just go fully decrim, then the people who need this, the government workers, the first responders, the firefighters, the policemen, the military, they won't be allowed. But if we can legalize psychedelic medicine and create a paradigm, then those who need it can get it without shame, without any pressure from their employers, without any stigma. Being in a self-pay company for a while, I learned a few things. One is that although we were making things accessible through telemedicine, it was almost this kind of Burger King, have it your way. Give the patient what they want. They paid $1,000. They want to jack up the dose to 1,200 milligrams. If we say no, they might ask for a refund. It shames me to even say that that crossed my mind at one point in my career. Because now we're able to provide the same beautiful work through health insurance. To take the same service that we created in the self-pay model, where sometimes you have to start there, to know what works, to be able to iterate, to reach that demographic that can afford that level of care and those systems that are created. But now what? We've done this all together, 3, 4, 5 years. We see how this work is. I've talked to many people here who are doing shamanistic and ceremonial work. And my favorite thing is when they say, I do a lot of this work for free. If you have this gift, give it away. Now, patient comes first, team comes second. That doesn't mean you sacrifice the business. But if you can make something accessible in a way that everybody can be part of that work, well, now you've scaled in a way that works as far as the business side as well. I believe that we all need to be our own healer and not our own drug dealer. We need a professional in our life. We need a friend. We need a family member. We need someone who has the experience to guide that work. And many of the companies in this space are pill mills. Just saying, hey, take this medicine, you'll figure it out. There's enough YouTube videos about this. But that doesn't provide the love and compassion that is needed with this medicine. And so while we're talking about accessibility, it's not just accessibility of drugs, it's accessibility of love. It's accessibility of empathy so that we can mirror that care back towards ourselves. The number 3 tenet that I believe is crucial when we're talking about the future of psychedelic medicine is safety. I took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. Many of my colleagues in this space took an oath to make a whole lot of money. And that's a very different perspective. And I'm not, again, shaming any business leaders or business owners. Making money is important. But when we sacrifice safety for profits, we see some of the outcomes that are happening. We've seen companies in this space get bought out by bigger companies and then months later shut their doors down, leaving thousands of people vulnerably without care. We need to admit our shortcomings as well. My favorite thing to say in psychiatry when anybody asks me a question is, I don't know. Nobody knows. Brain science is so inexact. In fact, the more we learn about the brain, the more we're exposing ourselves to the spiritual elements of life, those elements that we don't fully understand. And if we just neglect it and say all this is woo-woo, then we're pretending that we know what we're doing when we really don't. We need to integrate our shortcomings, be honest with our patients about what we know and what we don't know. The legal parameters, although in my younger years I had a problem with authority, regulatory bodies, legal parameters, residency director, they're all in the same category, just trying to get in my way. But I learned about something called corporate practice of medicine. If you're familiar with that, what that is, it's in many states they say if you're not a medical practitioner, you cannot own a medical practice. Some people might say, well, that kind of sucks, free market, capitalism, why can't we do that? Being in this work, I'm not saying that it's impossible to be able to do that if you're not a medical practitioner, but loop somebody in who has their ear to the street, who is on the front lines, who can guide all of the systems and structures that you're building from a place of patient comes first, from a place of safety. DEA and FDA marketing laws. I've become an expert in this as well. And they say things like you can't market a controlled substance for peak performance or for relaxation or meditation. It was not FDA approved for that reason. And at first, it just makes you feel resistant. We know that this helps with relationship bonding. We know that this helps with overcoming trauma. But if I put an ad up that says ketamine therapy for PTSD, they'll take my license away. The reason that this is important and we need to adhere to this regulation is it's a slippery slope. If we just start letting everybody preach this medicine is good for that and that medicine is good for this with no limitations and no regulation, well then we're going back to the quackery of my industry many years ago. We saw a company run ads on TikTok, nonstop, ketamine therapy. And we have children on TikTok, we have young adults, we have impressionable people who are abusing drugs in society. It wasn't months later until that company got shut down by the DEA and FDA. These are the pitfalls we need to learn from as a society as we're trying to evolve this work. The patients, what I saw as it pertained to safety in a self-pay industry, also had another pitfall. It was that many times they were taking the prescriptions and abusing them. They were using them in ways that wasn't per protocol. And I think we all have a responsibility, and we know there's a recreational application. We know that these drugs are, let's face it, fun in many ways. But if you're going to participate in the recreational side, let's make sure we delineate that there's a difference between therapeutic work and just partying with your buddies. One of the things that I saw that really inspired me to know that this is a safe practice. In the beginning, we had some caution. Are we really just pumping out ketamine in the world, and is that a problem? But what I saw in my psychiatric practice is that people more often ask for a higher dose, more meds, when it comes to so many other psychotropics. The number one offender I see is stimulants. It's rare to see somebody on a stimulant doing well, taking that medicine every day, and not feeling like they've hit tolerance, not feeling like they hit a dependence. Benzos. These are the kind of meds that people come and they say, I need more, it's just not working anymore. But if you look at the safety factor of what we're doing, we're moving away from take a pill every day to forget about your problems, to take a medicine, maybe once a week, to not numb yourself, but to connect with yourself. And I rarely had patients on the insurance side saying, I need more ketamine, doc, bump my dose, can I do this every day? Because the way in which we practice this is to go inward. It's not to escape. And when it's preached that way, it's much lower on the list of abuse potential. And I think that's the beauty we all see in this drug, and the reason that it has its own safety guidelines built in. We need to reinforce that even further. The fourth tenet, I believe, is so important, is community. This work needs to be done together. Now, you can be the psychonaut and get into your own mind and become your own therapist. I think that's the goal for all of us. But for most of society, introduction to this work is scary. Everybody in this room is very familiar with how these meds work, and there probably isn't that much apprehension, there probably isn't that much fear going into a treatment. But most of my patients that I've ever worked with, they are frightened. They've seen the media, they've seen the bad trips, they've talked to their friends, they've had their experiences at a young age, and so we need to come together and hold each other's hand through this work, at least in the beginning. Whether that means it's a psychiatric provider, a medical doctor, a therapist, an integration guide, a facilitator, this work should never be introduced individually. Community is so important. You think about the last few years and what we've all been through in a time of COVID, we learned more than ever how isolation damages our health. We need to come back together. I've been through 2 telemedicine businesses, and many people here today I've seen virtually for weeks and months and just met for the first time in person. And we got to hug. We got to embrace. In my residency training, they told me, you're a psychiatrist, you should never touch your patient. That made me pause. Because I'll tell a quick story. There's a program in this town, City Impact Center. If you're familiar with it, they do phenomenal work. They're there for the homeless community. They have the biggest food bank in town, adult education, child aftercare. They're really just trying to serve the underserved. When I was a medical student, I volunteered at this clinic. My beautiful wife, Gina, over here, her dad runs that free clinic that they have. We actually got in a fight. She dumped me. I called her dad and said, can I come volunteer at your clinic? And I was trying to get into her periphery. When I was there was a lady that came in, Hispanic lady, mildly obese, very sweet, and she came in and she said, I have this chronic knee pain. It's been there for years, 7, 8, 9 years. I can't remember the last time I didn't feel this pain. And in this clinic, this free clinic, we offered every single patient prayer at the end of their session. Now, this was a non-denominational thing. It wasn't really affiliated with any kind of religion or church, but it was just, may we pray with you after your session. Now, this lady came to me with her knee pain. I'm a second-year medical student, third-year medical student. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I may be trying to feel things out, teach her some exercises, some stretches. We don't have x-rays or MRIs in a free clinic. Maybe we wrote her some NSAIDs, some anti-inflammatory meds. And afterwards, she checked the box, yes, I would like prayer. We all came together, put our hands on her, and somebody led prayer. Now, mind you, she didn't even speak that much English, but about a minute into this prayer, she started crying. And I looked at her and I said, what did we do? Did we say the wrong thing? And she looked up and she said, for the first time in years, I don't feel my pain. I was thinking, they don't teach this in med school. What was the difference there? Now, scientifically, we can understand cortisol levels go down when you feel a little bit of optimism or hope, or oxytocin comes up through embrace and hug and affection and warmth. But they didn't teach me that in medical school. They told me not to touch my patient. And today, every time I see a patient, I ask them after our session, may I give you a hug? And if you haven't had that kind of embrace for someone who's really just trying to be there for you in a vulnerable time, it's not only healing for the patient, it's healing for the practitioner. If I'm not able to create that warmth and that connection, then what are we doing in this work? Community is so important. And now that's on the practitioner level, but on the business leader level, on the side of the people who are creating these systems, we need to be collaborative and not competitive. I know it's a capitalistic market. I know we're all trying to get ahead and make the most money and get ahead of our competition, but this industry, more than any, we cannot compete with each other. We have to collaborate. We have to share what we're learning. We're so young and new in this. If we compete and segregate our knowledge, then we're not going to grow and evolve. If we take our IP and say, this is mine, it's not. This IP was there thousands and thousands of years ago. It is not yours. And if you've learned something, share it with the world. We all should take an open IP stance when we talk about our therapy curriculum and our programs that we teach to our patients. When I was going through my stressors, I went through legal battles, settlement negotiations, partnership disputes. This is the life of being in business. It was a very difficult time for me. I harbored anger and resentment. It was hard to be the person I wanted to be, and there were people in this room who held ceremony for me in a way that I'm still so grateful. They came around, and I was new to this. It was kind of, I think, Reiki, kind of put their hands on me, and they were saying beautiful affirmations to me. It was my first introduction to this kind of ceremonial work. And I'll tell you, this was about 3 months ago. When I first decided to give this speech, the truth is, the topic, navigating a socially conscious psychedelic platform in a capitalistic market, didn't come from love, didn't come from giving, it came from resentment. It came from anger. After that ceremony, I don't harbor any of that anymore. So thank you all for that. This is what community can do in this space, is to take those leaders that maybe fell off their path and bring them back. You all have the power and ability to do that. I don't care if you're a business leader, a facilitator, or just a beautiful member of the community. Those bumpers and guidelines and guardrails, it takes all of us to help find that love again. Mental health is a journey we cannot fight alone. We need to be there for each other. We need to take the isolation out of this work and bring back community. We're doing a lot of great group work in this space, and I'm excited to see in this town, Las Vegas, who would have thought, it's kind of like the epicenter of psychedelic wellness right now. We have a motto we always say, if you can heal Vegas, you can heal the world. Why not start here? The fifth tenet that I believe is so important is integration. A lot of the times we think the medicine has all the answers. In many ways it can, but it's not the medicine that has the answers, it's you that has the answers. It's the spirit within you that finds that answer. Integration of therapy is so important. To give this work without any guidance is negligent. There was an old phrase that treatment without diagnosis is malpractice. Well, in this industry, I think diagnosis is malpractice. Treatment without integration is malpractice. We need to help each other heal. We need to help each other grow. We need to help each other find self-love. Our relationship with the world begins with our relationship with ourselves. And if love's not a part of that equation, if self-love is not what we're prioritizing, then we're hitting a dead end in this industry. And beyond all of that, once we find our own peace and happiness and we find our community and communion, we need to transcend that and find the greater good in the work that we're doing. That spiritual alignment, that taboo word. I'll tell a story. Early in the days of Better You, we had a phone call with Field Trip. Do you guys remember the company Field Trip? Good people. Ronan, Joe, I know them well. Early on, they were wanting to bring their product, which was IV and IM ketamine, to the at-home system. And we sat with them and they went through our curriculum, and the first thing they said is, we'd have to do away with all this spiritual talk. We just can't do that. And I said, why? He said, we're a publicly traded company. How are we going to be talking about spirituality? And I said, you are a publicly traded company. You should be talking about spirituality. Who has a bigger influence than you? If you want your stock prices to go up, let's start here. Let's start with not taking, but giving. Let's start with understanding that the best way to find fulfillment is to not focus on self, but to focus on others. Isn't that what spirituality really is? Is the belief that there's something more important than self? That needs to be woven into the fabric of this work. Shadow work, which in this community is such a common phrase, what does that really mean? That means that there's a part of you that you just cannot stand. You don't even want to look at it. There's something going on, thoughts, patterns, memories, that shames you, that gives you a feeling of judgment or embarrassment, so much so that we just want to keep it in the dark. But if we always keep that in the dark, it becomes the controller of our actions. Our subconscious is guided by those things that we are not giving attention to. And it creeps up in dreams, it creeps up in psychedelic experiences, it creeps up in relationship patterns, it creeps up in ways in which we don't fully understand. And when we can start to love the parts of us that we don't like, then we'll start to love the parts of society that previously we were maybe adamantly against. And with that love, we can start to conquer all of that shadow and bring it to the light. During my residency program, which now I actually teach there, full circle, I had a great program director. His name was Dr. Gregory Brown, and he taught us about energy medicine. He showed us some videos about people doing surgeries under hypnosis, removing a gallbladder under hypnosis. Can you imagine? Why are we pumping people with opiates if that's true? Why are we anesthetizing people if we can simply have them conquer their own mind and alleviate their pain? And if we can extrapolate that beyond surgery, how many of us harbor pain in different ways? Physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so if we can find these tools that are not medications, but they are psychedelic in the fact that they expand the mind, they put us in a new state of being, then we're really tapping into medicine that can't be patented, can't be raised for capital and promoted for growth and exit. It lives with us forever. It's ironic that it's ancient medicine helping us bring health into our future. We need to tap into that spirit and be more comfortable with the discomfort when people say, wait, what? Spirituality? We need, as leaders and facilitators and community members, to say this is part of the work. We're at a tipping point in psychedelic medicine, and we, all in this room, are the connectors, the mavens, and the salespersons that will dictate where this industry goes. The business leaders, the care team, the community members, we all have to come together to protect the sanctity of this work. Let's quiet the ego. Let's be selfless in this work. Let's put each other first. Let's make sure everybody who needs the care has access to the care. Let's prioritize safety over profits. Let's prioritize safety over the avoidance of negative Yelp reviews. Let's collaborate rather than compete, and let's focus on the greater good. Let's make sure that we connect with the spirit, whatever that means to you. Share it with everybody else, because no one definition is the same. And from a business perspective, if we all put more value out in the world than we take back, the world will be at a net sum positive of healing, growth, love, and giving. Thank you all so much for your time and the work that you're all doing.